Okay, we're recording, and I am here with Shane Millar, S.W. Millar, the author, and I'm just very excited to hang out with him. I don't know that we necessarily need an agenda. I was just like, hey, why don't you just come hang out? Let's just have an hour to chill. Um, yeah. So, and you just started a new podcast, the Write Better Fiction podcast. And you just told me the name, and I almost screwed it up.
You did, yeah. I'm
Uh,
really impressed that you got it right that
Thanks,
time.
man. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, you gotta take your wins where you can get them. You gotta take those wins where you can get them. Okay, so talk to me about what you're currently working on besides the podcast. Where is the life of Shane?
Ooh, okay, so what am I currently working on right now? Right now, I am working on the vampire novel that we're working on together in book
Yes.
coaching that I haven't actually had any coaching for so long because
Yeah,
everything's been crazy since I left my day job.
I love those
Um,
novels though. Those are great. I'm excited.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah, so haven't had to put all that to one side really for a bit while I adjusted to the freelance stuff that I'm doing now.
yeah.
So that's also taking up some of my time, obviously, all the freelance things that
So
I'm
talk
doing.
about that for a minute. You shifted from an actual day job
Mm,
to working every indie author's dream. You
yes.
ditched the day job.
I did ditch the day job. Yeah, I did.
How did that? I mean, you don't have to share this the ins and outs of your financial details, but like, what did you do? How did that work? Like, what were the steps that like got you away
Okay.
from?
So, one, I'm going to say this. I was really fortunate in how I left my day job and the circumstances surrounding that. So, um, my day job was a stable job. I worked in insurance, and that's a stable industry. So I had to think very hard about whether to leave because even throughout COVID, insurance was one of the most stable industries around. Like, no, obviously.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, probably got more stable during COVID. It's one of
yeah,
those
yeah,
that this like, yeah, we need to like
yeah,
get more of this. Yeah,
exactly. However, the job was fucking soul destroying. So, that
which is also how insurance is always displayed in the movies. In the movies, it's always like, the people who work in insurance are like under fluorescent lights in this like soul crushing world. Yeah,
dude, it is like that. It's like interrogation lights for like overhead lights,
yeah. When they,
open plan office. Like, I
yeah,
don't do well in open plan.
in The Incredibles, when they were like, we want to show how like soul crushing it is for him not to be a superhero, they're like, he's an insurance adjuster.
Yeah, yeah. That's basically it. Yeah, that was my life.
Oh,
So yeah, very so that was a huge decision, a huge factor, sorry, in the decision to leave because it was, it was getting to the point where I was, well, I will say this because I'm happy to be open about it, but it's getting to the point where I was clinically depressed and I've been diagnosed with clinical depression and the job was demanding. The hours were fine, but it's just the amount of work they expected from you in the job compared to the amount of work that I'm doing now. You'd think running your own business and working freelance, you'd be working. I'm working more, but the work is not as stressful.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's more life
Yeah.
giving, so it doesn't feel like you're carrying around a 50-ton weight
Yeah,
as you like
exactly
get up from
that.
your desk. You're like, oh,
Exactly that. And it was funny because I went back into the office a couple of weeks after I left, hand back in some stuff. And as soon as I walked in, I thought I definitely made the right decision because as soon as I enter this place, it's like a black cloud settles over me
oh,
again. Like it's yeah, I was
yeah,
not happy, right?
yeah.
And the great thing is everyone I bumped into was like, "You look so happy now," and I was like, I wonder why that is. I wonder why." Um, so yeah, I did decide to leave. That so we haven't even got to what I'm working on right now. This is not a therapy session for me.
We are not in a hurry.
But
People
no,
who listen to this
we're never
podcast
in a
know.
hurry.
Yeah,
We're
people who
never
listen
in
to
a
this
hurry,
podcast
man.
know. Jeff is not in a hurry to do it.
Jeff's never in a hurry. Jeff came on my podcast
Yeah,
and he was on there for a long time, folks. Like
yeah.
it's a long interview. Good. It's
This
good.
is what I enjoy. This is what I do for fun. So I'm gonna hang out.
Um, yeah, so I knew I'd made the right choice. In terms of how I came to that choice. So for those who don't know, I'm a qualified Fictionary certified. No, I'm not. That's wow. Qualified Fictionary certified story coach. Just a
I
Fictionary
was just gonna
certified
go with
story
it. I was
coach.
like, that's a lot of really fancy
That's a
sounding
lot of
words.
shit.
Yeah.
Um,
These are some nice words put together. Qualified Royal
Whatever.
majestic Fictionary certified
Jeez, man.
editor.
It's still morning here. It's yeah. So I'm a Fictionary certified story coach. I did that through Fictionary, obviously with Christina Stanley, and I was
It would
lucky
be
enough
weird
to.
to do that through somebody else.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it would be
would.
really
I
strange.
I could try.
Yeah.
I mean, I could try and do
I
it through
got to be
someone
the
else.
Fictionary certified editor through the homeless guy that lives down the street from me under the
Yeah,
bridge. He
he
was like,
just said it
"Hey,
was
yeah,
cool,
you got a badge? You gave it to me. It's
and
nice."
now I do what I want. Um,
Oh my gosh.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm not going to break down all the problematic issues with that.
So you got let's get us back on track. You got a I was about to say a challenge coin, but that's not what you
Yeah,
got.
I won a challenge.
Yeah. You
I
got you
I
got
leveled up.
you went to Fictionary and you got certified as an editor.
Mm. Yeah, then I did a bunch of project work for them, like on the side, a few blog articles, some edits through them, and different bits and pieces. And then Christina reached out to me and said, "Oh, do you want to come and?" I use the word work very loosely because it doesn't feel like work at all. But do you want to come and work for me and I'll pay you more? And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, fine." So we had a discussion around that, and luckily, the offer was enough for me to leave my day job,
Nice.
um, which I'm very grateful for, and I will always be grateful for that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because yeah, like I'm in a much better place now, just so positive, back to how I feel like I'm myself again, kind of thing, which is nice.
That's nice.
Um, in terms of what I'm working on, so that's part of the freelance stuff that's taking up my time. In terms of what I'm working on author-wise, I am writing the book that will never die, which is called How to Think Like an Author. For my
It's just a bunch of scribbles on the inside.
it won't die. It's not going to die.
How to think like an author. There's a whole chapter where you just cuss.
Yeah,
Like, damn
basically.
it!
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That chapter is
So,
called publishing.
yeah,
Sorry.
that chapter's called When You Sit Down to Write.
That's
No,
right.
it's not. It's not. Um, but yeah, so I'm working on that on the nonfiction side of things. I hope to have it finished. Oh fuck me! I hope to have it finished by the end.
See, there's that chapter. Oh
Jeez.
man.
By the end of May.
Oh
Whether it will be, I don't know, because every time I think I'm finished, I'm not. So we'll see about that.
yeah.
Fiction wise, like I said, the vampire stuff, that's part of what I'm working on. I was working on that, and then a new character kind of punched me in the face and just decided I was telling their story now.
Nice.
So I am working on 3 interconnected series, the vampire one being one of them. The second series is about a witch bounty hunter who has to investigate the death of a friend. Set in the same world, lots of room for world expansion, because I made that mistake with my first series and didn't leave any room for that, which was not a good idea.
Yeah.
And my first series, although it's okay, it's not like there's some things I would change if I could go back and change them now, obviously, because it's the first series, right?
Yeah.
And then the third series in that interconnected world is like a demon university idea that I'm playing with.
Nice. That's fun.
Yeah. So there'll be 3 interconnected series there. This year I'll also be working on recording my nonfiction audio.
Awesome. You have a good voice for that.
Well, I don't know about that, but anyway.
Yeah.
And then
it's an emphatic fact.
Okay, fine. Good. True. Objective truth there from Jeff.
Subjective truth. That's the word I was looking for.
And then I'm also
it's certified qualified fact.
Yeah, certified, qualified, homeless.
So
absolute fact.
With a challenge coin outside.
And a level up, total level up there. That's right. Yeah. And then I'll also be working on turning some of my nonfiction books into online courses, hopefully.
Nice.
So I think that's it. It's like, apart from the podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a new podcast.
Yes.
Yeah. Write Better Fiction. Did I get it right?
Yes. Yeah, you got it right 2nd time.
I was really nervous that time. I screwed it.
Oh god.
No, it's a great shit.
Gonna get it wrong.
It's a fantastic title. It's just me. It's got nothing to do with the title. I was trying to explain to somebody yesterday what the podcast I make was, and I was like, "Oh, it's got a doctor in it."
It's the doctor thing.
And then they were like, "Are you a doctor?" I'm like, "Oh,
No.
come on,
I just call
no,
myself one, all
like
right?
a script doctor, okay? It's not. Damn it."
I can call
Um,
myself what I want.
I got a coin from a guy in an alley.
He
Uh,
said.
he said I could do what I wanted. Um, oh man,
Oh man.
yeah, yeah. Early on in this podcast, one of my friends, Rachel, was doing things with me. If you go back to like the first like 3 or 4 episodes, Rachel is on it, and she has a mug that says "I do what I want." And we used to work together, and she'd show it to me all the time in the office. I'd be like, "Hey, this thing isn't like really complete," and she'd just hold up her mug.
Yeah,
Like, all right, I'll go finish it for you.
I like
Um,
that.
yeah. So okay, so last year as you were fighting to come out of the day job, we're gonna rewind a
Mm.
little bit. You had um a tsunami of publishing.
Yeah, I did.
Did you do like 5 books, 7 books?
Uh,
How many books was it?
mm, 9 books
Nine
last year.
books. Man,
Yeah.
okay. That is super impressive. How did that so I want to qualify one to take a little bit of pressure off of your answer, but two also just to like be clear.
Mhm.
We all write differently and we all feel differently about writing things. So how that felt for
Yes.
you may not translate to how that feels for somebody else, but I do think, and I'll share my experience with this too, because I also had a rapid release, not 9, but I had a rapid release schedule at 1.2. Some people love it. Like I was reading an article on Medium this week where this guy was like, I'm selling 1,000 copies a day. Um, but to get to 1,000 copies a day, I had to have 100 books in the world. He's like, so I wrote 10 books a month and just
Oof.
like put them into the world. And he's like, and he was like, being very honest. He's like, now the nice thing about having 100 books in the world is that I can slow. He goes, I can slow down to 5 books a month. It's like,
What?
but I mean, he's in his article, he was
Yeah,
genuinely
yeah,
like
yeah.
excited about it. And I was like, damn, more power to you, man. And that was pre-chat GPT. If that guy's using chat GPT, he's probably up to like 3,000 books a month. But that man's an idea factory. So anyway, it feels different. All that to say, it feels very different to each of us. So it's not, but I do think it's helpful to hear our experiences. How did publishing 9 books in like a 6 month period feel to you?
Tiring.
Yeah. Did you well, we'll talk about that in a minute, but like how fast did you write them? How fast did they come out?
Yeah, so I did. I released the first one in January of 2022,
Okay.
and I'd written that. That was the one that took the longest to write because it was like my first book. So it
Yeah, it always takes the longest. Yeah.
probably took me a year to write that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so that was already written. So that was published in January 2022. Then I was halfway through book 2 at that point.
Yeah.
Um, so I finished that, and that came out in February
Okay.
of 2022. I did the third book was a novelette, so it was much shorter, and I did that in March. And then the fourth book, which was about 70K, which hadn't neither of those two had been started or written, that came out in May.
Okay. Nice.
Um, and then I moved to non-fiction after that, so I haven't actually released any fiction since that, which I find amusing. But anyway, and then I did the non-fiction. I'd say from about May to October, I released the 5 non-fiction books.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, yeah. So it was a lot. Like I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. So that's like a book. May to October is like a book a month that you're
Hmm.
cranking out.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, was that a pace? So for some of us, I know that like there's that rapid release is something they do all the time. For some of us, it's like I turn this on and off. Like I rapid release for like a year and then I stop and then I turn it back on and then I turn it off. Um, do you have any plans to turn it back on?
Uh, Not well, I say no, but I know what I'm like, so maybe. But
Okay.
I don't have any concrete plans to turn it back on, no, because
Okay.
one, um, my motivation for doing that was to leave my day job really fast. Like I knew
Yeah.
I wanted to
You
leave.
wanted to get out.
So that was a big driver. Like I don't have that driver anymore. So
Yeah.
I don't feel the need to like crank out book after
Hmm.
book after book. Um, However, if I get really invested in a story and a series, I am the sort of person that will just
Yeah.
focus. So I could end up rapid releasing by virtue of just enjoying what I'm doing, but that wouldn't be my plan. Like I'm not I might write fast still, but I might not release fast. I think
Yeah.
because the thing is like when you're trying to juggle writing and launching, because if you're truly rapid releasing, you're always launching and you're always writing.
Yeah.
And that's hard because launches are a lot of work. Like if you do promo behind your launch and you're on
Hmm.
podcasts advertising your shit and
Yep.
you're doing all this different stuff
You have to be
and
creative on social
writing.
media, so it sounds like you're selling, so that you're selling, but doesn't sound like you're selling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The soft sell,
Yeah.
guys, the
This
soft
sells
sell.
sell. That's right.
Yeah, so there's a lot that goes into that. So yeah, that's another thing. Like when you're launching, you're always on social media, you're always doing podcast
Yeah.
interviews, you're always like in that period of rapid release, I did a shit ton of podcast interviews. And
Yeah.
obviously, while I love doing them, it takes a lot of time.
It does. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you've got to promote that podcast episode when it comes out, as well as
Yep.
your own stuff. And then you've still got to write the stuff. You're like liaising with your editor at the same time.
Hmm.
That can be tricky. Cover designers, you need everything to come together at the right time to
Yep.
have everything ready to release.
Yeah.
So
Did you have
it's
one
not for
editor
the
or multiple? Because I've talked to people who are rapid release and they're like, I need like three editors.
yeah. So for the fiction stuff, I had one editor for my
Wow.
first series.
And they kept up with you. That's great.
Yeah, and I chose her initially because she writes in my genre as well. She
Mm,
came highly recommended. Her turnaround time is fast. Her Because I get
nice.
developmental editing, I get story editing rather than anything else. Or I did then. She she could give an in-depth story edit in like record time. So I was lucky
Nice.
with the editor that I found. Shout out to Alexa White Wolf, by the way, if she's listening to this,
Nice.
because she may well do.
Hi,
But
Alexa.
yeah. And then non-fiction wise, fuck it, I'm just gonna say it. I don't use an editor for my non-fiction.
No, that's fair. I know a lot of
Um,
people that don't.
and I know that like breaks all the rules. You should always use an editor, but I don't necessarily agree. I
Let,
have a
let me,
back.
yeah, I don't know if this is how it was for you, but when you're trying to when you're publishing in order to get out of a financial circumstance, the more you put into the book financially, the more you have to make from the book on the back end.
Yeah,
Okay, so like my first several novels, I didn't use an editor because I didn't, A, I was poor, and B, I didn't have the money. So
yeah,
like I didn't have the money to pay for people. So I was like, I would have people read it, but it's not the same as getting like a proofreader who's gonna like work through every jot and tittle and fix all your commas and all your periods, right? Like so there are grammatical errors in those books, and there's but I literally did not have the money to pay somebody to do it. And when you're publishing in order to relieve financial pressure, whether that's to get out of a job or to, you really do have to think about these books as a financial investment. And
yeah.
like
You do.
the more you put into them, the bigger your revenue has to be on the back end to make up for that. And it's just I know that a lot of people, especially coming into publishing, thinking about things, I didn't think about that until I put my book out to be edited by somebody. And I was like, I don't have that kind of money sitting
Yeah,
around.
yeah,
What are you
yeah.
talking about?
Exactly. And
And they're
this,
like, it's going to cost this much. I'm like, what? Uh, yeah,
it's true though. This opens up a whole thing. Like, I don't believe that your socioeconomic status should in any way prevent you from becoming an author. That is total bullshit. And
yeah,
anyone that spouts that is, sorry, I'm swearing a lot today.
you're fine.
Um, and anyone that spouts that, I think, is completely wrong. Like,
Yeah,
you don't feel like you can't do this because you're poor. That's
yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah.
But I did make the strategic choice. Like, I knew I had a certain budget, which is more than some people have, less than a lot of people have. And I knew that I wanted to use that for the fiction because I can't design a great cover for my urban fantasy books. I
No.
can't. I'm too close to my story to analyze whether it's actually any good or not.
Yeah.
So I knew that I wanted to put that aside for the fiction. For a bit of context, non-fiction, I have a background in journalism, so I am used to writing in that style.
Nice.
Well, I say I have a background. I've got a degree in journalism, but I'm trained to write in that
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of chatty, brief, non-fiction style. So I didn't feel like I needed an editor for that.
Yeah.
And I've had no complaints about the quality of the book, so that's all good. And I knew that I could just about design the covers for my non-fiction book, so I designed the covers myself.
And they're nice covers.
Um, Thank you.
Yeah.
So I there are no costs associated apart from time cost to actually write the thing and do my own edits. There are no costs associated with those books, and ironically, they make way more money than my fiction books do. So yeah, that was because I knew that going in because I'd followed people like Joanna Penn, and people always say, "Oh, nonfiction is easier to sell. You'll have a better
Yeah.
financial shot with nonfiction." So I thought, right, they're the books then that I'm going to invest no money in because I think I can do this without having to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it paid off. So
That's great.
yeah.
That's nice. Um, and yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's really interesting. Um, okay, so after you come through this season of rapid release and
Mm.
then become a Fictionary certified editor, kind of start a new job and all of that, which slows your rapid release schedule.
Yeah.
And then I know because we're friends, you went through kind of a dark period.
Yes.
Um, which the reason I wanted to talk about it is because I did the same thing. I rapid released. This was right before I started the Dialogue Doctor. It was right at the first of COVID. It's 2020. I had been planning a rapid release in 2019 because I'd written two fictions. I had written a series of fiction and it wasn't selling. Regardless of what I did. Looking back on it, I understand it has major cover problems, like it had genre issues, like it's got issues. Like I understand now why it didn't sell, but wasn't selling. It had built a fan base, like it had a couple hundred fans that were like, we want more of this, but not enough to actually like support, not enough to justify writing the next one. Does
Yeah,
that
my
make
first
sense?
series is the same. I'm in
Yeah.
exactly the same boat with my first
Not
series
like
for
it's
sure.
the series
Yeah.
isn't done. It needs two more books,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not enough. There's not enough financial capital there to justify
Yeah.
me taking time to write. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start a new series. I'm going to rapid release this one. And it was actually Jay Thorne and Rachel Herron who told me to rapid release. So I blame them completely. This is all their fault. I'm
I
just
always
kidding.
blame Jay. Blame Jay for
That's
everything.
changes everything. Um, no, they were doing the Writers Well podcast at the time, and I reached out to them because they used to have a like question and answer section. I was like, hey, here's
Yes.
where I'm at. I was like, what do I do? And they both came on and they were like, you need to rapid release them to build the selling spike. And for people who don't know what the selling spike is, because there was a time where I didn't know where that is. When you release a book, you get an initial spike and then it tails off. And ideally that tail goes on forever, but a lot of times it doesn't. It just tails off to where it goes down to zero. But they call it the long tail, right? Like it's a slower. So, but every time you release a new book in a series, you get a smaller spike from the other books in the series. So the idea is that like if you can just with rapid release, it's like if you can just keep releasing books, they all keep spiking and that long tail becomes much longer. Um because of how algorithms work and all that kind of stuff. So that um that being said, I had two books. I wrote a book in December of 2019 and a book in January of 2019, and then my father-in-law died, which sucked. And then I published, and then I wrote I started writing the third book in February, and then I released them in March, right as COVID hit, which was probably not the best idea. COVID didn't check with me on its schedule though.
No,
Uh,
did not.
yeah, so I released all three of them really fast, and nothing. Like they kind of took off, but they didn't take off. Like it was one of those weird. Yeah, I actually maybe a year early. I think I released them in 2019. I wasn't releasing them during COVID. I released them in 2019. Yeah, because I was like, that's not right. I was doing something else at the beginning of COVID that had the same kind of impact. But yeah, I released them all. It was the year before. I released them all in 2019, and they didn't take off. And again, I owe a fourth one to the series, but after 3 months, after writing 3 books in 3 months, I was done. I didn't write anything again for like 6 or 7 months because
Okay.
I'm not, and I just learned like I am not that kind of writer.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was definitely 2019 because I had started writing again by the time COVID came around. But yeah, so it was 2019. I released all three of them in 2019, and it was exhausting. And I found like I discovered like that was in my process. That was where I was like, oh, I'm a 2 to 3 book a year guy.
Yeah.
That's how my brain works. That's how my and I think initially there was some shame around that because there's like, does that mean I'm less of an author than these people who can write a book a month and sustain that for years? Like, does that mean I'm and finally I was like, it's not less or more, better or worse. It's just this is just who I am as an author. And I just need to accept that like after I write a book, I need 3 weeks off before I edit it. And then when I edit it, I can edit it and put it out, and then I need like a month off before I start the next one. I'm not good at like editing one while I'm writing the next one in my head and then like releasing both of them. Like I'm just not good at that. Like so anyway, that was my experience. And it was down, it shut me down. Like putting three out did shut me down for like 6 months, where like 6 or 7 months where I couldn't write anything. I was like, I'm so tired of this. And that fourth book still looms over my head. It's still like
Yeah.
I'm like, I should finish that series. But again, like the series did not sell. So it's like, finishing it is kind of like that would just be like a hobby project. There's probably 100 readers waiting for that book.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I don't know that they're waiting for it anymore. It's been 4 years, but they would, there's probably 100 readers that were waiting for that book.
Yeah, they would be interested should you write the book.
Should I
But
write
yeah.
the book? But,
Yeah.
100 readers, if they all went and bought it and I priced it at an appropriate price, it's like $150 for me. Is that worth financially, you know,
Yeah.
putting that book into the world? And that actually would just kind of cover the cost. Well, I have the cover, but that would cover the cost of what I spent on the cover, right? Like, so it's like I'm still just digging out of the red with publishing that book. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how podcast listeners take to this episode because I don't usually talk finances on this episode. So it's a weird, but that's part of the reason I wanted to bring you on because it was like, hey, I think especially for new authors, it's important to kind of hear how those of us that have been publishing for a while think about these things as
Yeah.
investments in future and like the way that yeah. So anyway, that was my story of being down, and feeling like, oh crap, I failed to do this. For me, it was failure. I'm not applying failure to you. For me, it was failure. I was like, I failed to do this. I should just go ahead and hang up my I don't know,
Yeah,
boxing gloves. Yeah, I should take up my
your rightly
baseball glove.
equivalent
Yeah,
of boxing
that's
gloves.
right. I should go give the homeless guy back my challenge coin.
Yeah, you don't need
Yeah,
it now.
yeah, yeah. Here you go. Sorry, I know you said I do what I want,
Give it
but
to someone more worthy.
that's right. I can't. Please pass this on.
It's too much.
It's too much burden. I can't do what I want. Yeah. So, what was your experience? You published and then had a down period. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I think well, a few things happened. So one, it got to the stage where while I love writing nonfiction and I love helping authors, like it gives me joy to do that.
Mhm.
Absolutely. It's not like I felt creatively unfulfilled because I hadn't written fiction for months. Like from May onwards, I hadn't written any fiction. And I was teaching people how to write fiction. And then that got into my head. I'm like, oh, but I'm teaching these people how to write fiction. But I
It's a
haven't
weird
actually
thing,
written
man.
any for so
Yeah,
long, right?
it's a weird.
Um, so I guess that was kind of like a self-doubt thing of, oh, but do I really know what I'm talking about anymore?
Yeah,
Because it's been so long since I wrote any fiction. Can I really speak to it with with any authority.
Let's also I just want to claim that like this is a natural feeling that everybody
Oh
has.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
I have it at least once a session. I'll be in a
yeah.
session with somebody. If you watch my face real closely, you'll probably catch the moment where I'm like, why am I doing that? I don't know what I'm doing. What am I here for? Like it's
Why do
just
people
like,
pay me for
yeah,
this?
what is going on? How did I
Yeah,
get here? Yeah. So there's a mild panic of like, I don't know why I get to say these things. Anyway,
yeah.
yeah.
That is really common. Like it's not. So if you're feeling that right now, you're not alone. We all, I think we
Oh,
feel that. Oh, I
yeah.
feel this probably on a daily basis. I'll have a
Yeah.
little like, oh, do I really know what I'm doing? I can't
Hmm.
believe I've blagged my way into this somehow.
I know. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that was part of it. That I hadn't written fiction for so long. Yeah, I'm teaching people how to write fiction, which is ridiculous because I have written fiction, so I know how to write fiction. But if you're not practicing what you preach, I guess it's that kind of, oh, what are people going to think about that?
Yeah, I think different, like everybody has their own kind of like, you know, it's Easter, I can say this, cross we bear. We all have our own like, burden, mental and emotional burden we carry through this. And,
Mm.
you and I think our burden is like authenticity.
Yeah,
Am I
100%.
why who allowed me to do this? Is
Yeah.
kind of our some people
Nobody
don't
told me
care.
I could do
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Apart from that homeless guy at
Is
like
that
under
guy
the bridge.
real? Is he even real or did I just imagine him? Yeah, so there is that like, am I allowed to do this? But there is not everybody carries that burden. Like other people have other burdens of like I've talked to authors who are like, I'm allowed to do this, but I'm not any good at it burden. Like this
Yeah.
sucks burden or
Yeah, there are tons of different things.
yeah.
And it depends what your driver is. Like if you strive to be, I hate the word authentic because it's so overused, but if you strive to be kind of showing up as yourself
Hmm.
and you want people to resonate with you because you are you, then that is a driver, like the authenticity thing.
Hmm.
Um, but there are many. Like
Yeah.
there's self-doubt comes from many places.
Yeah, yeah. It's so nice. There's such a variety of ways to
Yeah,
slow your work and doubt yourself. There's like a
it's just
whole, it's like a Toys R Us. You walk in, there's a gazillion toys you didn't even know existed
it's
that you
really
can play with
beautiful.
to cripple
Yeah,
yourself and
yeah,
put yourself crying in a corner. There's so
it's
many of
great.
those. Yeah, it's
I love it.
fantastic.
I
Yeah,
love the Warp Toys R Us. It's fantastic.
the Toys R Us of self doubt.
Yeah,
Doubts are us. There's
Doubts R
so many
Us.
of them. Yeah,
Yeah, just great.
yeah.
Don't go shopping there.
No, it's bad to shop there.
Yeah, don't
Yeah.
do that. So that was part of it, and then I think that's when I started. So in the October, I started writing How to Think Like an Author. And obviously, I'd already had this seed of doubt that was like, oh, but I haven't written fiction. Ooh. And
Yeah.
then, so it gets to How to Think Like an Author. I'm writing a book on mindset about being an author, fiction author specifically.
Mhm.
And I am a fiction author, but I haven't been, quote unquote, a fiction author for months now. So who the hell am I to write this book? And
Which is
who,
such a nonsensical. Like that's what's
oh,
the
yeah,
best about that.
I know.
It's
It's
super
stupid.
nonsensical. Yeah.
It's stupid. So like, who the hell am I to write this book? Who cares? Who's going to read this shit?
Yeah.
Who, what have I got to say that hasn't already been said? All of these things. And then that kind of went into full blown imposter syndrome where I was thinking, and then I was like, oh, maybe I don't know how to do anything. Like, maybe I don't know how to write fiction anymore. Maybe I don't know how to engage my readers
Yeah.
anymore. Maybe I don't know how to like get out of bed. No, it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
But maybe I don't know.
I've had mornings like that. I'm like, I
Yeah,
don't know how to write. I don't
seriously
know how to
though.
coach people. I
Yeah,
don't
like,
even know how to wake up. I can't even
yeah,
wake up. Yeah.
yeah. No, it does get like that though, in
Yeah.
all seriousness. But yeah, so you then it kind of snowballed. Then I stalled on the book completely and kind of did busy work
Mhm.
for months because I was convincing myself that well, I'm working on something. So, and when I say working on something, it was a lot of like brainstorming
Yeah.
and like, oh, I need to redo my business plan because that'll fix
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And I need to redo
Yeah.
like my autoresponders because maybe they're not good enough. And
Yeah.
all this stuff, like this
Yeah.
busy stuff. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm still an author because I'm still doing the thing. Um
That's right. Yeah.
I'm
And I gotta
not.
say, like, a lot of times that's how I have to pull myself out of a spiral.
Yeah,
I have to be
yeah.
like, all right, what's something small I can do today to get back to the place where I'm writing again? It's like, what's one small, like, okay, I can look at my plot sheet again. Look at that. I'm looking at it. I am a writer, right?
Yeah,
It's one of
I'm
those.
doing the thing.
Yeah. 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes is up. Okay. Whew. Okay, that was
Oh,
good.
I'm
That
done
was
for the
good.
day.
Yeah.
That was
I'm good. That
cool.
was good. Yeah.
Yeah, so and then just like yeah, convincing myself that all these busy things were the same as actually running my business, and it wasn't. I was just ignoring everything that I couldn't face, right?
Yeah.
And then I think two things happened that pulled me out of it, or maybe three. So the first was I decided to actually do nothing. Like I literally thought, right, I'm gonna completely step away from this. I'm not gonna look at any advertising. I'm not gonna look at anything to do with my
Hmm.
books. I just need a month to like, and I gave myself a month. I just need a month to step away and not like I'll still be involved in the writing community and stuff, but I'm not going to do anything to do with my business.
Yeah.
Um, I stopped doing TikTok and just did a bit of Instagram because I actually enjoy that. And then I literally just filled the again cliche, but I filled the creative well in the sense that I just did exactly what I wanted to do on any given day. That wasn't anything to do with my business.
Yeah.
Um, and that really helped to create some distance from the problem because I think I was so wrapped up in the problem that I didn't give my brain the space to figure out how to solve the issue.
Yeah.
Uh, so that was one thing. I would say if you really are in the weeds, and obviously if you're a full-time author who depends on income from your business and that's your only source of income, then you can't step back from everything, right? Because you
Hmm.
can't just let your business go down the tubes. But step back from those things that you can step back from. That works for me. So I gave
Yeah.
myself a month. I just did anything that gave me joy, anything that whatever I was feeling at that given time. And then two other things happened. So we both know Sasha Black,
Hmm.
and I spoke to her about how I was feeling, and she told me to stop being so fucking stupid. And
She's good for that.
yeah, and she basically she talked to me about a lot of stuff and it really helped. Like she didn't just
Yeah.
say shut the fuck up and get on with it. That she did say that,
Yeah.
but that's not all she said. We actually had like a good chat about everything. So she helped on that front. And then I actually messaged you. I can't remember if I messaged you or you messaged me because you'd heard me say something. And we had a discussion about like how I was feeling. And you pretty much said the same thing, like just
Yeah.
people will want to hear what you've got to say because
Yeah.
we've all got an original message to
Yeah.
say and all this stuff.
Probably less eloquently than Sasha, but yeah.
Yeah, probably. Um,
Less cool. Sasha says things in a more cool way than I did.
no, I think you basically just said, "Why didn't you say anything?" And you
Yeah.
should talk to people about this shit. So I did, and it helped.
Yeah.
Um, so those were the things like talking to other authors because we've all been through this. And when you get into these spirals, you sit back and you think, "Well, I must be the only one because they're doing so much better than me, and they've got all this stuff that they're doing, and their life is just fine." And
Yeah.
it's obviously it's not. Um, so yeah, talk and
Hmm.
space
Yeah.
what worked for me, I think.
Nice.
And yeah, I am. Although the book won't die, it's not because now I don't think I can write it. It's because more content keeps cropping up, which is a much better place to be in than I
Yeah.
don't.
That's
I don't
better. Yeah.
yeah,
That's better. That's better than like crippling self-doubt. The like having
yeah,
too many ideas is way better than like I can't manage the one. Um, yeah, I do just want to say that like, I joke with other authors that writing is a team sport. That like this is not,
but it
you
is.
have to have a community around you.
Yeah,
You have to, because it's not it doesn't need to be like something you pay for. It doesn't need to be like, necessarily even somebody you and I've never met in person, but you have to have other authors you're talking to because it's such a weird thing that we do to create things and put them into the world that like it just plays with you emotionally. And like I wrote my last novel It's almost a year old. It's been a year since I put
Mm.
anything out. My last novel's a year old almost. It'll be a year in May, so it's like 10 months old.
Well, no, you
And
just put nerds out.
I just put Nerds out. You're right. So never mind. I'm a
Yeah, so you're
complete.
just talking
I'm.
out your ass
You know what's funny today is that like
again.
I can't get anything right about my own writing history, or I'm like I don't know. Things come out. They just
Yeah,
blah,
nerds is
you know.
out. So you
Nerds is
shut
out.
up. Move
Shut up.
on.
Yeah, but I did put Inside Outside
Yeah, you
out,
did.
and it was such an emotional write that like I probably could have quit after that one if I
Yeah,
didn't have a community around me.
I
I
do
probably
remember
would have
you
quit
having
after
a
that one.
I
Yeah.
remember you having a slump after that.
Yeah, because it was like
Yeah.
this was such an emotional experience putting this out, and it didn't. The launch failed because of things outside of my control. Um, a
Yeah.
couple of the distributors seriously effed up
Yeah.
my stuff, and we will not name names, but yeah, oh, but yeah, they said and they delayed everything, and I did not have the money to recoup that launch to
Yeah.
be like, oh, I can just pay for this launch again. So it just kind of died. I keep thinking about relaunching it, but it just kind of died on the vine. And I depended on some launch. I was going to try some new launch strategies that didn't pan out because we're always like trying new strategies. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go tap into this community and they're going to love the book. And I got to that
Yeah.
community. They're like, no, this is a nonfiction community. And you wrote fiction about the nonfiction stuff that we want to talk about, but we don't care about the fiction. That's why this is a nonfiction.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I actually had somebody ask me, like, why don't you reach out to me when it's streaming on Netflix? I was like, no, that's not how this works. I
Wow.
was
Wow.
like, yeah, I wish your lips to God's ears. Can you make that happen? If you can make that
Yeah.
happen, then I will reach out to you
Do
after
you know
that.
something I don't? Like, do
Yeah.
people just
Is this, do people reach out to you all the time with like, hey, can I come on your podcast to talk about my book? And you're like, well, let's wait till it's streaming. And they're like, all right, I'll call you back in 3 months because I would love to get on that pipeline. Like, how does that
yeah,
work?
like how does that well, oh,
Yeah,
okay, yeah, fine. I'll call you back. It'll only
I'll
take
call you
like a
back.
couple of weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's all right. I'll go. Man, why didn't I think of that? Get it streaming on Netflix. Totally should have done that.
Yeah.
Crap, my launch strategy is all off. I gotta start with the Netflix streaming.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
anyway, yeah. So yeah, but it's you get those slump like I hit a slump and I was just like I'm tired, depressed, and I don't
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
write. Yeah, and if I didn't have a community around me of well, now that I think about it, if I didn't have JP being like, "Hey, I need the next Nerds episode tomorrow," I would have, I probably would have quit for a while. Like I would have been like, you know what, I'm done for a bit. Yeah, so it's a team sport. You got to have people around you.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Um, Speaking of people around you, talk to me about the new podcast. What are we doing?
Okay, so Write Better Fiction podcast, it's essentially me trying to interview people on a weekly basis. And I say trying because
That's the best. Attempting to speak the words on the screen to people.
yeah, I
Yeah.
try to interview people and like get some really good really good insights from people about the writing craft, the business of being an author, publishing, marketing, all that good stuff that we all
Yeah.
like to geek out about. And yeah, I was really surprised about some of the people who agreed to come on the show, considering that when I was, I'm not gonna lie, considering that when I approached these people, the show wasn't out yet. It wasn't established. I don't have an audience. I'm contacting you to say this is a brand new show.
Yeah.
Won't be out yet, so probably won't do a lot to enhance your
Yeah.
platform. Let's be fair. Would you mind coming on the show?
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that most people said yes to coming on the show.
That's really funny.
So you've been on the show. I wasn't surprised that you came on the show.
No, I show up everywhere.
Yeah. Sorry about
I'm
that.
an attention
I
hoe.
just
I show up.
I wasn't
Yeah.
surprised.
Yeah.
Um,
Almost like Elmo started a new podcast on botany. Would you come on the show? I'm there. I'm here. Here I am.
yeah,
I'm on the show.
sure.
Let's talk about botany. I don't know anything about plants, but I can talk. How are you today? I love plants. Yeah.
I love the plants. Um, yeah, and I've had like today's episode is Angela Ackerman, which
It's a much better interview than mine, which is
oh
fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
Without question.
Without
Yeah.
doubt. Yeah.
I've interviewed Angela. I know. I
Yeah,
understand.
she's fantastic. So I was
She's
so
yeah. Really, Jeff, your episode is like a soft launch. You know how like when they start a restaurant
Yeah,
and
that was
like
like a trial.
yeah,
I
they're like
just wanted to
friends and
see whether
family
it.
can come. Nobody has to pay because we're not sure if the food's actually going to be any good. That was your interview.
Yeah, I just wanted
The
to see like
real
if I
launch is
like
Angela.
doing
We're gonna bring
it.
Angela in.
Yeah.
Angela's gonna talk about, honest things.
Yeah, so yours was like proof of concept,
Yeah,
really. And then
really, but not like proof of content. Like proof of concept. Like, can I record?
yes,
Can I
can does
put
Zoom
this?
work?
Yeah, can I stream
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
Does distribution work? Yeah. Is this okay? And now we're actually so the
Yeah.
first
Now we can
episode is
get
Angela.
like we can get the real
Yeah.
people in now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was on a
Yeah.
podcast one time where they called me episode 0. And I was like,
Oh.
that kind of hurts my feelings.
Don't do that.
I
No,
was
in
like,
all serious.
that one took the joke too far. Um,
Wow. I should have just called you like sample episode.
that's my Oh man.
But in all seriousness, Jeff and I, we take the piss out of each other all the time.
Yeah.
His interview was actually very good.
Oh,
Like,
thank
this isn't me being a dick to Jeff, right now anyway.
you.
So yeah, the interview was good. But I've got Angela Ackerman coming on. I've got Helen Scheurer coming on the show. I'm
Nice.
really surprised that she said yes, considering how many books she sells.
Mhm.
I have Christina Adams, best-selling romance author, coming on the show.
Nice.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
got some
you do
good.
have some heavy hitters.
Yeah, I've got some good
Yeah.
people. Sasha is obviously coming on the show.
Nice.
I wasn't too surprised about that because I kind of made her do it.
It's funny. Well, you live nearby each other, so you could like you're on the same
Relatively
island.
speaking,
Yeah, you're on
obviously,
the same
yeah.
island,
Like
so you could
I
go get
could,
her.
I could
Yeah.
track you down in
Yeah.
theory
You could
if I
find
really
her.
wanted to.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Daniel Wilcox. Like I've got some good people coming on the show,
Nice.
and but I think the two that surprised me most were probably Angela and Helen because I thought they're not going to say yes. It's not an established show.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but yeah, so I've recorded like 12 interviews so
Yeah.
far. I've got
And
those in the
I have
can.
bad news for you. Doing a podcast is also a little like publishing books. Like I have 138 episodes, and I'm still like, this isn't really an established show yet. This is
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll
this
always
isn't
feel like
really.
this. I'll be
Yeah.
like, who's this guy just asking random questions?
Yeah.
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so one of the themes around the show is obviously writing better fiction. So I tend to ask all my guests, "Why do you write fiction?" That's kind of like the
Yeah.
routine question that I will ask at the end of each interview, and I've had a different answer every time, so that's been really interesting to kind of
Nice.
dig into. Yeah, and I'm actually having a blast. I really enjoy it. Like the way I'm doing it is batching everything, so I'll do like 10 interviews, and then I'll have 10 in the can. Once
Nice.
5 have gone out, I'll reach out to another 10 people, because then at least I can have breaks in between, and I'm not recording every week. And
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's
so
great.
yeah, it's been really fun, and I've learned. Like I started it for selfish reasons, let's be honest, because I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn all the
Yeah.
stuff from
Yeah.
people. But if it can help other people as well, then so much the better.
Yeah. I will say one of the biggest benefits to me from doing the dialogue doctor stuff is that like I've learned problems that we're all having, and it's been really beneficial to be like, oh, I have a platform that forces me to try to solve these, which is
Yeah,
really nice. Yeah. It's one of the things I love about this community is that like we are all constantly working on problems together, and I can float solutions, and they'll be like, no. I'm like, okay, let me go. I'm gonna figure out something else.
no, that's
Yeah,
rubbish, Jeff. Move on.
yeah, no.
Find
Oh,
something else.
yeah, go find something else. Okay, I'll be back in 10 minutes. But yeah, it's really fun. Um, yeah, okay. Well, that's really cool. And they can find the podcast everywhere.
Yeah, it's like YouTube, Spotify, all the places.
Nice.
Yeah, if you search for it, it should just come up. And that's
Okay.
the Write Better Fiction podcast.
Yeah. All right. So we got like 7 minutes left, and I'm gonna ask you a question I didn't send you in advance.
How
There
dare you?
is, I know, there's an author that's been like listening to us chatter, who is like Shane from 2 years ago. They've got
Okay.
like a book in the can. They've got like a book that they've been tooling around with for a while. Like this could be a series, but they don't know what to do with it. What's your advice to that person?
Dude. Okay. So I'll have to put myself back in that headspace. But I think my advice to that person, so they've got a book in the can, might be a series, but they're not sure, and they
Yeah.
don't really know what to do.
Yeah. And they've
Okay.
been working on it for like 10 years. They keep pulling
Okay.
it out and they're like, I don't like it. They put it back.
I am
Yeah.
familiar with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so my first question to them would be, what is your motivation for writing? Like, what would be the main goal that you're
Hmm.
trying to achieve here? Is your goal to write one book and put it out into the world and say that you've written a book? If that's the case, work on that book at your own leisure and publish it when you feel it's ready, because then you're done. Like
Yeah.
you've hit your definition of success.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is your goal to, say you're in a similar position to me, is your goal to get out of your day job as fast as possible?
Hmm.
Um, if that's the case, I would, do you know what? I would actually change what I did even back in the day. So I plowed on with that first book, regardless of the fact that I didn't really know what I was doing. And that was the book that I ended up putting out into the world. Luckily, I read enough in the genre that it kind of passed muster as an urban fantasy book, but
Hmm.
not quite. Um, I would say you use the first novel as your practice novel, the one that you're working on now.
Hmm.
Don't necessarily write that novel with the intent to publish,
Hmm.
because there'll be a lot wrong with it. And if your goal is to make a lot of money from your books to leave your job, then you want to make sure, as much as I hate saying this, you want to make sure you're giving readers what they want, right?
Hmm.
Because then they're going to buy the book. So I would tool around with your practice draft in your free time, if you have any, and then research the genre that you want to write in. Look for things that you love in that genre, because you still want to write, even if you're writing for the reader, you still want to write what you love, which is a, a philosophy that I've adopted now. Like, yes, I want my readers to be really happy with what I write, and I want to give them what they want, but at the same time, I need to enjoy writing that thing.
Yeah.
Um, so find that balance, do a lot of market research. And I know market research is a word that makes some people like die on the inside, but it doesn't have to be all that deep. Like, just look at what's best selling in your genre. If it's a genre you love, you won't mind reading a few of those books anyway.
Hmm.
Spot patterns, spot themes, and then write a new book. Once you know your market and you know what the reader expects, write a new book with the intent to publish, and make it a series if you can. Like, if you read enough in the genre and you're reading consciously, so you're taking note of
Hmm.
those things that crop up over and over again, you will come up with a series idea, because you'll have that series structure firmly in your head.
Hmm.
Then I would say write 3 or 4 of those books in that series before you release anything, because but the thing is, I did the wrong thing, so I just dropped them as soon as they were ready.
Hmm.
And what that meant was, by the time I got to book 4, I'd written myself into this huge corner where I don't know, I still don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah.
Um, I've written myself into this huge corner, because if I'd written all those books together, I could have gone back and seeded stuff into books 3, 2, and 1, which
Yeah.
would mean that then what happens in book 4 actually makes sense, and I haven't driven myself into a massive dead end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I know that's not what people want to hear. I get it, because it wouldn't have been, well, it wasn't what I wanted to hear. Hence the fact that I just dropped them when they were ready, and they didn't do as well as I
Yeah.
thought they probably
Yeah.
could have.
Totally.
Even though that advice has been drummed into me, like, have a small stock of books ready to go that you've worked on as a series, so that all the plot holes and stuff are ironed out, and then you can do the rapid release, but you've already written, so you're just focusing on the release.
Yeah. On the
You're
constant
not
launch.
focusing on the writing as well. So
Hmm.
that will make it easier. And yes, it's labor intensive and it'll take you longer, but if the end goal is success, as in, if your definition is to leave your day job success, then put the work in. And yeah, it's going to take longer, but the benefits, in theory, like, this isn't a golden bullet or a guarantee, there's no
Yeah.
such thing, but you can give yourself a better chance of doing, like, leaving your day job and doing all the things. And then, in addition to that, I'd say the main thing that I did that I'm grateful that I did is throw myself headfirst into the writing community as soon as I decided to take writing seriously. Because, to be honest, half of the opportunities that I've had and half of the connection, like the connections that I've built and the things that I've done because of that is because I made a lot of connections in the writing community,
Hmm.
and people got to know me and I got to know people. And I'm not saying that in a grubby, like corporate networking way that you hear in the corporate world. I'm saying it in a form genuine relationships with people that you resonate with,
Yeah.
because then those relationships will bear fruit in
Yep.
terms of your author career. Don't try and force yourself to have a relationship with someone that you really can't stand. That's like a corporate grubby,
It's
feels a
gross.
bit wrong.
Yep.
Yeah. Like you'll find the right people. And once you do, you can, again, leverage is such a corporate word, but the relationships are mutually beneficial. So you will help those people, they will help you. It's all reciprocity, and opportunities will come faster. So yeah, stock up some books, know what you're writing and why. If you're a genre writer, then just do some research into your genre to make sure you're actually writing the thing that you think you are, because I wasn't.
Yeah.
And and yeah, just don't be afraid to throw yourself in first. And I know it's hard to, like, especially if you're an introvert, like it's a little easier for me because I'm an ambivert with extrovert tendencies. But if you're an introvert, you can still throw yourself into the writing community. You don't have to be on camera like this to talk to people in the
No.
writing community. Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say this is, just I think that path is really fantastic. Thank you for laying that out.
But it, again, it depends. That's two definitions of success: the one
Yeah.
book or the leave your day job. There's loads in between that.
Yeah, there's a thousand things in between that. And I know, like, I've talked to a lot of authors where they're like, "Oh, I want a Pulitzer."
Yeah,
Well,
that's
that's a
different.
totally different path, right? Like,
Yeah,
you need an agent. You
you need
need
to be
a
querying, you
Yeah,
need to be
you need to be
writing more
query. Well, and
literary
I don't even
stuff.
know if you need to be querying anymore. That, I mean, that's a big debate, but you
Okay.
definitely need to be going to conferences and making FaceTime with people,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's that, yeah. So there's different paths depending, like you said, depending on your motivations and what you want. There's different paths to how you get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I appreciate you laying that one out. I think it's great. All right, man. Anything else you want to talk about before we?
No, no, I
All
think
right.
that's
Well,
all good,
thanks for
man.
coming on and chatting with me. This was
No
this was a lot
worries.
of fun today.
Yeah,
I
cool.
appreciate it.
No worries.
I'm gonna stop the recording. We can talk a little bit more.
Awesome.